Welcome to Titan HST's Business Continuity Today, hosted by Todd DeVoe, where planning meets reality.
And I do love that drop. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at in this fine nation or this fine world. And I'm Todd DeVoe. I'm the host of Business Continuity Today, and I am the Director of Emergency Management over at Titan HST. And I'm also a lifelong learner, college professor, and I love to learn. And what I learn, I love to bring to you guys. But today, I'm going to be in the lesson seat, not so much the lecture seat, because I have one of my favorite people in the entire world, Dr. Carol. Come on in.
Good morning.
How you doing today?
I'm peachy. I mean, it's frigid here, but I'm inside, so I'm not complaining.
It's frigid here too in Southern California. It's 60 degrees out. I might have to put a sweater on.
Okay, my empathy is very low. Very low.
All right, so
I will tell you, everyone in our state has been looking on Zillow and Realtor.com and such for the last few days, thinking we need to get out of here. So your 60 looks good.
There's a couple of houses for sale in the neighborhood, but they go pretty quick. So if you're gonna do it, you better get on it.
Yeah.
So I'm here to learn from you today,
sure.
Right? Because I mean, like, there's all this equivocation terminology that's out there. There's the IT sector, which tends to steal, or maybe we're stealing from them. I'm not sure which way it goes. Terminology, they even have, the Community Emergency Response Team, CERT. The computer guys have a CERT team, but it's Computer Emergency Response Team. So even down to those things. So let's get into what is business continuity and what is the difference between business continuity and, say, disaster recovery?
Okay. Wow. What is business continuity? I like to use the term business continuity management from the program level to include business continuity, which is kind of the overarching practices. And there's a lot involved in that to unpack. And then crisis management, which I believe is more of the responsive piece and the monitoring type of piece where you're looking at what might be coming up. I think what has happened over the years is we've used a lot of different terms, and those terms have been terms of convenience that have conveyed certain things to the audience we're serving, or they've been in a trend of this big company calls it something, so we're going to call it that thing. I think that is a mistake. I think business continuity should own kind of its mantle and stay consistent with it. You know me, Todd. I'm looking for professionalization in business continuity in the same way I do in emergency management. How can we make sure that business continuity has the power and the identity it needs to kind of dictate its practice in the space, good practice? Because what happens is too often in these spaces, organizations don't understand who you are and what you do, and then they try and dictate your practice, which too often diminishes the quality of practice and the effectiveness of practice. So I'm a business continuity program, like management program, with business continuity crisis management married together. But what I recognize is it comes in many names. I think the real challenge for us is what we're doing in practice and how we're going to make that practice speak for itself. So I haven't really seen disaster recovery for like a gazillion years. And that's saying a lot because I'm a gazillion and one. So yeah, that's an old one. But, contingency, we've seen so many of them come and go. Contingency management, straight up crisis management and having that kind of be overarching, hybrid programs. I was just reading something Lou Canton wrote about this where, where's the emergency management at? Where's the BC at? Are there hybrid spaces in between there? So I think by any other name, we come to the place where our practice needs to be respected, recognized, and given the professional stature it deserves.
Yeah, I oversaw the business continuity and emergency management section at a college I was at, and it was really two separate hats, and so it got confusing sometimes because What I mean by that is like when you're in meetings or whatever with the president of the college or whatever, and he'll start asking questions regarding this or this, and it's like, wait, what area do we want to discuss first? Compared to managing the disaster, compared to keeping business up and running and students in classrooms or however that looks. And so I think that's sometimes where we get that equivocation. And the reason why I wanted to bring in recovery versus continuity is because now you start to throw in the idea of continuity of operations, right? And then at the same time, you're trying to rebuild that building. And in my mind, recovery is like building things back up to make it whole again, whether it's physical buildings, where business continuity is more along the lines of keeping operations going. Am I in the right ballpark with that?
I mean, obviously in keeping your operations going, if there's a facility or something else involved and it's damaged, that is part of a process. But you're talking about something that's potentially a long-term project, but I would still see that under the continuity mantle, because everything we do in this universe as an organization. So say my organization's organization ABC, and ABC wants to continue operations, and frame includes all kinds of things. It's not just the business continuity management program, right? It's everything that's in that sphere. So part of that framing for ABC as an organization is to make sure they're making smart decisions about risk, about where they're going to invest in product development, where they're going to advertise, all of those things. All of those things come about. Part of those things are reliant on facilities or tools or other resources. So in those spaces, I see that as a living unit. And I think business continuity makes sure the living unit stays alive. So that is a place where I kind of see your recovery piece. It's part of keeping the living unit alive. And that's what I think the business continuity professional does. Not only in the spaces where something is happening right now, but looking forward. Are we scanning the landscape to see what's happening in our sector, our field, our areas of interest, in the world, in our community, wherever? Are we keeping in touch what is going on so we know what could affect our organization? Because it really only takes that one little thing, right? It doesn't have to be tremendous either. It's stunning how small the thing can be that takes out an organization, or really, let's not say takes it out, but really gives it a moment where it has to say, holy moly, how did I get from A to Z? And if you're in business continuity, you're scanning the landscape, you're watching trends, right? You're watching all these different things. So in your example, what I see that as all part of the organization's health. And I think business continuity lives and feeds the organization in that space. And I don't think everyone thinks that. I'm not naive about that. I mean, I know this is my little world where I live and I'm happy. And I believe that organizations really value the business continuity management program in that way. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. In my world, you have your business continuity person as a VP. That's where they should be. They should be at the shoulder of the CEO and COO. That's the way I view business continuity. And I think that's where smart companies keep their business continuity person, and of course give that person the freedom. And when I say person at that level, you have a VP and then you have a team, but they should be in a space where the organization is looking at them and saying, look, what do you see? I call it foresight or future sight or future casting, whichever way you want to look at it, forecasting. Are you looking into the future? Here's what we know is happening. We know that because social media is driving XYZ, that if we don't pivot here, we could take a real hit. Or if we don't put protection in now, we're going to see the impacts of that later. So in all of these spaces, that person's looking out. And this as an EMBC person. First of all, our lens is not the same as normal people.
Right.
And I say normal in the kindest way, right? So you know that I call it the twisted little lens when I tell my students, I go, oh, at the end of the semester, you will never see the world again in the same way. And that's what happens. We don't see things just like, oh, this happened. We think, oh, this happened because that other thing happened. And then they didn't realize it. And this thing happened. And now this happened. And these 18 other things are going to happen. Oh my gosh, tell so-and-so.
Right.
That's how we think, right? So that's not the norm. And I think that the challenge for us in these spaces is always about communicating how we serve the organization best and our role.
Yeah, and I think that's I always say this. I think on any after action report that we have, we should already just have communications as a line item, which is sad because if we know it's a problem, we don't do enough to fix it. The communications, whether it's actual up and down the line of communication or across the board communication, it always seems to be a problem. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I'm going to put one more twist to it.
Correct.
He believes that business continuity should be focusing on other things as well, such as like the supply chain issues. And for instance, like if you work for the auto manufacturers right now, getting the chips and the fact that you can't get them in or whatever the reason why they're delaying and creating more vehicles. That's the stuff you should be looking at as well as a business continuity person, not just looking at the physical aspect of it or the IT side of it. That other side, the supply chain, should add into that. Is that something? Is he right for that, or is he off base?
Of course he's right. He's absolutely right, right? You have to understand the environment you're working in. And if you're not going to be able to get product, you have an issue, right? So we can't, or whatever pieces that go into your product, if we can't get the things we need to develop our product or to continue business, we have an interruption, so to speak, right? So, I don't think it's just that either. I think there's so many pieces. So you have supply chain, even thinking about what's going on, what kind of political and social movements are going on. Do you think about, we've seen I'll use your automobile example. We've seen the movement towards climate. Now everyone's like, okay, if we weren't on that shift already, it's time. We're going to have to start migrating from the vehicles we've been making into this new market and doing those things. And what can we add in addition? Because we know this time is coming, what we can look into the future for. What are the parts that are involved there? What kind of things are we going to need? What type of long-term contracts are we going to get? What type of vendors are we going to lock up now in advance to make sure that we're getting some of those prices we need? I mean, to me, in this space, it's a space for genius, truly. And I don't say that in a way where I think people are out of it. I think business continuity folks, given the freedom to think in this space, have the potential to deliver so much more than the paycheck they're paying for, that the organization is paying for, because you can just really think a problem all the way through. And that doesn't happen. I mean, as unbelievable as it is in business, it doesn't happen often enough. I tell my students, I teach them this thing called the 360 model that I created quite a while ago. And all it is a perspective model. So you look at decisions based on different viewpoints. So the organization's viewpoint, the stakeholders' viewpoint, government, and the public. 4 easy spaces. And what it accomplishes is more of a systems thinking mindset, right? So I'm not just looking at it from this way. I'm looking at it from this way, and then this other way, and then this way, all these different ways, to kind of start thinking about the problem from all the way around it, thinking about the way it's going to impact people, the way people are going to receive it. So I think in these spaces, we need to think about every single connection in that system that can potentially affect us. Now, you have to be careful because systems are everywhere and you could go into the black hole and never come out. But my point is this. And this kills me because I know a lot of business continuity folks are limited in this space. If you are just pushing out risk assessments and, any type of impact assessment or trainings, they're not giving enough freedom. to do the things you need to do to be successful. So I think that the real message here has to be to organizations, if you really want the power of a business continuity management program, you've got to set those people free to really, really work with your system. And I think you have to marry that with the organizational goals as well, to be the most effective. I mean, there's different pieces here. And, I think I shared with you something that I've written recently, which is, one of my BC pieces. And really, I think if we aren't generating our work from a systems framework, you're doomed to fail. I'm sorry to say. I know that sounds not kind, but the days are gone of believing that we are just in some static place where we could say, if we do X, Y, Z, we'll be fine. It isn't that way. We're affected by things internal to the system, external to the system. And it's hard to always know where those things are coming if you're not tracking the system itself. So I think it's kind of a necessity of life that we have to get to.
I think one of the most impactful lectures I've ever been part of was when Derek Cabrera, Dr. Derek Cabrera, was talking about systems thinking and what that really means. And that really opened up a world to me. And I started really taking a deep dive. And you know how I start researching everything into what systems thinking really is. And I think you're absolutely right. And I really believe that systems thinking in general, applied to business continuity and emergency management for that matter, is going to make if you do it right, will make a huge difference in how you see things and how things work. And talking about recovery versus business continuity, putting that systems thinking into that is going to make both of them work better. That's just my, since you brought that up, that's sort of my opinion on it.
You're absolutely right. And think about systems thinking like this. If the core of the organization is called the beating heart, is its mission, whatever its identity statement is, its mission. If you're operating in a system, your system should rotate around that core. How are we living in this space with the system that we're developing? How are we making sure our system maintains in that space? So, this is true of people. As we know, everything's a system. You know this from Derek Cabrera. Everything's a system. Everything from the most minute thing to the largest thing. But I think in those spaces, the more we can think about this is true in emergency management, it's true in life, but to have healthy, effective organizations, to be able to do a little bit of forecasting, future casting, whatever you want to call it, you have to understand the system and what you're trying to produce in the system. And if you don't get that, you're not going to be successful. I call it mapping the system. And that's a most basic term going in. Go and at least draw it out, sketch it out. You have here at NDSU, I have Carol, and Carol's within this department, and this department's within this college, and this college is in with this in this university, which is in this community, which is in this state, which is in this industry. Those types of things. What's happening in high ed that could potentially affect Carol? What's happening in North Dakota? It seems more daunting than it is once you get the mindset. Really, once you get the mindset, you're in the groove. Do I have time for a quick example?
Absolutely.
Okay, I will tell you, this is my favorite example because I'm still bitter about this. You will recall when the airlines decided to save costs regarding fuel, they didn't want to raise the price of tickets. They decided they'd start charging for luggage, baggage, right, if you want to check your bag. And so one airline did it, and then they all fell into place. Well, that has actually had a pretty profound effect, if you think about it, on a lot of different things. And I don't think they thought about anybody else when they did it. But think about everything from the minute that every decision you're making, from the minute that you go to the airport with your luggage. First of all these decisions about what you're carrying now, right? Because people don't want to pay the $25 or whatever it is to check. So now they're carrying different sizes of materials, products. They got to smaller bag requests. So you're seeing a lot more sales in the smaller bag size. This is before we even get to TSA or doing anything else. You're not having people check as many big bags. So you've relieved some of the impact there. But then when they board the plane, everybody wants to get on the plane first. They can get their bag in the spot and they're going to shove it up in there no matter what. And now they've allowed different benefits now to card holders and frequent flyers
Right.
when you can board, so you can do that. They didn't think about the ways in which this would potentially affect airport traffic. And I'm talking walking traffic, because it used to be you could walk in an airport and it was very rare for you to see someone pulling their bag behind them unless they were a flight attendant or something like that, or a really serious business traveler. But now you see a lot of those. It actually affects the traffic patterns in the airport. It affects the size of luggage you need in luggage capacity you need in a plane, right? So you don't need as much underboard luggage, or whatever the bottom of the plane is in that space. You don't need that as much. It's affected the ability to sell credit cards because of all those perks I mentioned as well. I mean, I could go on for hours about one decision that one airline made, and it completely changed the way we operated in the space, and no one thought about it. But as things came along, people took advantage of those initiatives. So these are the spaces where you just go, oh, I don't know, this sounds like a great idea. Let's just do this. And then you see these things roll out, but you need thinkers in these spaces. And, and this is true of emergency management folks as well, and business continuity. We're thinkers. We think about what happens if you do these different things, how it's going to have an effect in this other space. So I just think people don't recognize the power that our folks deliver in these spaces. And if they did, they would say, oh my gosh, of course this person should be a VP.
Absolutely. It's funny, just going on your luggage story. I was watching this thing it was a TED Talk, and they talked about the fact that the wheel on the luggage is relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
That it isn't something that's always been, always been around. And I wonder if that had any impact on increasing that. All right, well, we're kind of coming to the end here. And normally I don't do comments on the show because I'm normally lecturing. And so I'm just going to go through here. There's a few comments in here. And one of them is back into the communications comment that I made, talking about being on the ARP. And then Elaine says, hey, it's not necessarily a negative thing. Joshua kind of comes back and says he agrees with her. That's not necessarily a negative thing that's on the after action report. My point about it there, guys, is that with communications, if we know it's an issue, it's something that we should be working on continuously, and not wait to be a problem in the AAR. And you're right. I mean, sometimes you can say it's a positive thing, but normally you don't put that in your things to improve on that aspect of it. And so I'm going to give you one last word here, and it's what would you say if you could your fairy godmother, you do your wand, what would you do to correct things in the business continuity world to make it perfect?
Okay. One last comment. I feel like I can't take a breath in that space there now. Okay. I think the most critical thing is to get them to the place where they have the power not only to have their contributions heard, right, where they're solicited and heard. So again, back to the VP space. Also, because if you don't have access at that space to really kind of distribute and look at the system, you're always battling that challenge of getting up through the food chain. And I think that's very difficult for successful practice to kind of get jammed up in spaces where you're waiting for some supervisor to convey something. And this goes right back to your communication situation. I think, and again, one of the strengths I believe BC folks have to have is storytelling. I think we have to tell the story of the need for business continuity. I think we have to, and you have lots of examples I mean, look around, look at the companies that have fallen because it could be anything from they didn't do a product recall when they should have done a product recall, or they didn't see this issue coming with some part they're not going to be able to get, and then they scrambled and they lost market share. Or something on the other side where their CEO went out there and said something, you're like, oh my God, what did you just say? And now no one is buying our product anymore. So those spaces, there's lots of storytelling to be had. And I think we can look at those and tell the story. I don't think business continuity folks want to be the Debbie Downer. And I don't think it's Debbie Downer. It's creating the imagination for what can happen and understanding the value of the BC planner who should be a VP. So that was really my final word on that.
Absolutely. Carol, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Love chatting about BC.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. And it's always a pleasure to have you in there. And I love the comments. And I'm glad today I was able to kind of address those a little bit more. And everybody, please remember, check out Titan HST for all your communication needs, since we're talking about communication. And again, check them out, say hi to them, and say that you heard them here on Business Continuity today. And don't forget, everybody, stay safe, stay hydrated.